What is reality made of? And, come to think of it, how is what reality is made of actually made? At the deepest ontological level, how is anything made? Only if we understand that can we understand how anything else is made. People who believe in God never ask how God is made. What do you put together to make God? After all, God must be made of something. He's not made of nothing. And if we know what God is made of, then we can understand God, right? If we do not know what God is made of, we can never understand God. If we do not know what reality is made of, how can we ever hope to understand reality? The ontological question, what is reality made of, is the most foundational question. If we can't answer it, we can't answer anything in any foundational sense, in any absolute, objective, certain way. Science isn't interested in the ontological question. In fact, it's repulsed by it. Because it's a question outside its remit. It cannot be answered using the scientific method, which is predicated on observation. Think of it this way, if the observable order is underpinned by an unobservable order, how would you propose to use scientific observation to ascertain the unobservable? Never mind how do you see dark matter and dark energy, how do you see invisible energy and no matter at all? Yet despite science being prohibited by its own method from addressing the unobservable, it nevertheless makes astonishing claims about unobservable things. The extreme empiricist David Hume decided that causation couldn't be real because he couldn't observe it. So, that's causality out of the window because it fails the observability test. But what did science use to replace causation? Well, what do you think? We are logical people, are we not? We can work this out. Yes, that's right, science opted for a causation, the opposite of causation. Of course, there was no rational and logical scientist or philosopher capable of pointing out that a causation is as unobservable as causation, so you can't possibly turn from causation to a causation and expect to be taken seriously. But, hey ho, we're dealing with scientists here. They pride themselves on being empiricists. And, as we all know, empiricism is the sworn philosophical enemy of rationalism. All scientists fundamentally oppose rationalism. Because they are religious believers in empiricism and their senses. The key to a causation is randomness and probability. You never say that X caused Y. You instead say that a probability wave function randomly collapsed into a particular observable state, which has a particular probability associated with it. More probable outcomes are more likely to be observed, but anything that is possible, no matter how remotely, may be the observed outcome. We're in a cosmic casino. God plays dice. How does randomness make anything? How does it make itself? What does it even mean to say that anything can be made of randomness or preceded by randomness, or owe anything at all to randomness? Science is extremely keen on randomness. It even claims that randomness can convert non-existence into existence. And thus it dispenses with God. Science has an almost official policy of replacing God or mind with randomness and probabilities. You never say that God or mind caused anything. You say that something randomly happened according to various probabilities. But how can you have non-existence and randomness? If you have the possibility of random events, then clearly you do not have non-existence. You have some type of existence that is compatible with random action and probabilities. What is this type of existence? How does it exist at all? You will find no answers in science. Science, as we know, is very keen to do away with God and mind. However, it is very reluctant to replace them with anything rational and logical, anything with eternal and necessary, definable existence. Science wants to replace eternal and necessary things that can be exactly defined via metaphysics, logic and mathematics, with undefined temporal and contingent things or, even worse, undefined probabilistic contingencies that do not even have temporal characteristics. Scientists like to claim that it cannot be said what came before time was created because the word before implies a previous time, which obviously didn't exist in the absence of time. Of course, the word before can also relate to what preceded something in a causal chain. The question would then be, what preceded time in the causal chain? A metaphysician would say that something eternal and necessary preceded the temporal and contingent order. A religious person would express this as God, outside time, made time, God, outside space, made space, God, outside matter, made matter. Eternal and necessary mathematics could create a temporal and contingent scientific universe. That's what ontological mathematics is all about. Ontological mathematics is about space, time and matter having a mathematical precursor, and that precursor is eternal and necessary frequencies, belonging to eternal and necessary minds, called monads. We might call these mathematical monadic minds God minds since they have many of the same definitions as God. There is not one God. There are countless gods, and they all work in conjunction, using ontological Fourier mathematics, to make science's space-time universe of matter. To put it another way, mathematics underlies science and creates science. Science, even though it is 100% dependent on mathematics, detests that idea and does everything to avoid it. Science claims instead that what comes before science is some atemporal dynamic probability cloud that cannot be called existence in any meaningful way, but, by some miracle, can collapse itself into temporal existence, into reality. Science claims that existence is an undefined product of an undefined precursor of existence that is connected to probability and the possibility of random collapse into one of the probabilistic possibilities. You would expect the most probable thing to happen, but, in fact, anything with any non-zero probability can occur. If it can happen, it will happen. If it's not forbidden, it's compulsory. You know how it goes. Sadly, science doesn't know how to define what is impossible, what is forbidden. After all, it believes in a forbidden impossibility, an absolute category error, the concrete order being founded in abstraction, order in chaos, order in randomness, certainty in probability, existence in non-existence, mind in non-mind, life in non-life, and all the rest of it. All of this, science's entire worldview, is irrational and illogical. It is promoted simply so that scientists can avoid the logical and rational conclusion, totally repellent to them, that God, mind, or mathematics causes the scientific order of existence. Atemporal, abstract probability clouds are how science roots itself in something that is not eternal, necessary and ontological, namely God, mind or mathematics, which are all effectively synonymous. To be absolutely clear about this, God is simply the collection of all eternal and necessary mathematical monadic minds, made of eternal and necessary frequencies. That is the base of existence and the foundation for the whole of science, with its space, time and matter. Mathematical frequency is the essential and indispensable precursor of space, time and matter. Nothing is random, nothing is probabilistic. If you could see behind the scenes, which you can't, you would see an entire, adamantine, causal order grounded in everything having a sufficient reason. Randomness has no reason at all, and cannot be located in an existential order predicated on the principle of sufficient reason, as ontological mathematics is. So, those are your two choices. 1. An eternal and necessary order of exactly definable things which are made via reason and logic, hence are mathematical and metaphysical, and 2. A temporal and contingent order of vague things that can be observed and measured but not defined in themselves, and which supposedly come from a twilight, liminal zone of neither existence nor non-existence, a kind of limbo of probabilities which randomly choose themselves. Ah, the joys of atheism, the most irrational and illogical solution to existence ever conceived. Atheism is about self-performing magic, done without purpose or reason. Reality, by contrast, is about the operations of reason, presided over by the principle of sufficient reason, which is present in everything by way of ontological mathematics. All is math. There is nothing else. Everything that you imagine is different from math isn't. The only thing that is different from math, order, is randomness, chaos, but the latter is impossible. It is impossible strictly forbidden by the principle of sufficient reason. Got it? We don't live in a reality that is 23.5% random and 76.5% rational. It's all rational or all random. These two opposites cannot coexist and interact. It's one or the other. That's logic for you. To understand reality, all you have to do is exercise your reason and logic. You don't have to use your senses. If you do, you might end up as a scientist, believing that existence comes from the irrational and illogical chaotic abstraction of randomness. Don't go down that road if you want to reach an answer to existence. We live in a much more interesting universe than science would have you believe. We are in a mental universe, a teleological universe, an intelligent universe that is literally self-optimizing and self-solving. The whole point of existence is to solve itself, and the reason why existence needs to solve itself is that it has an entropic aspect called becoming, as opposed to zero entropic being, and this entropic aspect is driven by an internal will, to power, to truth, to completion, to find its answer. It can do so in only one way, by eliminating its entropy. You would not be far off by thinking of reality as a self-solving Rubik's Cube, but one where all the components in the puzzle are monadic minds, each capable of competing, entropy, or cooperating, niche entropy, with each other. The universe of mind solves itself when every mind cooperates absolutely. It creates a new puzzle when, at the Big Bang, it maximizes entropy and conflict. It is maximally scrambled and must then go on a cosmic journey to find the optimal order that is deeply encoded in it and which it must reach to solve itself, just as the solution to the Rubik's Cube is always implicit in any particular scrambled version of the cube. You yourself are a node of this cosmic self-solving puzzle. What could be better than that? The last thing you are is some purposeless, meaningless, pointless, random collection of lifeless, mindless things staggering from one probability to the next, with no possible conclusion or answer. Here today and gone tomorrow, and all for nothing. Science says you are a pointless blip or glitch in an unimaginably vast universe. In fact, you are a foundational node of existence, a god, and this universe is your playground that you all the other god minds created, and through which you are coming to a complete understanding of yourself and reality. You are not nothing. You are not meaningless, you are a god. And, deep down, you have always known this.